Naval Intelligence Officer John Jordan joins us, as he does every Friday. John Jordan, good to see you. Roger Stone back in the headlines. We haven't heard much about him for a while. Is this becoming a problem for Donald Trump?
Not really. Roger Stone, just by way of background, I actually spent some time with him. He's kind of one of those guys that peaked in high school. He's kind of regarded as a little bit of a buffoon in Republican circles. Here's the crux of the matter. Roger Stone was charged and convicted of a number of crimes. However, the prosecutors in the case allege that he also engaged in intimidating a witness and applied what's called a sentencing enhancement, or an addition to the sentence, based upon a statute that is intended for violent criminals that threaten the lives of witnesses, through proxies or from prisons and so forth. That's really intended for violent, really bad guys. And that's based upon just a text that Roger Stone sent to this guy named Randy Credito saying, "I'm going to get you," and then using a word I can't say on the air. During the trial, it came up that Randy Credito, the so-called victim of this, didn't really feel threatened at the time, just thought it was just two guys having an argument via text, and didn't feel like he was in any physical danger. That said, the prosecutors decided to tack on this sentencing enhancement for another 4 years in prison just on that. So the whole thing was kind of flimsy. President Trump just shown via Twitter, of course, put a spotlight on it, felt it was excessive prosecution, and the Justice Department kind of, looked at the case and then withdrew that part of the sentencing recommendation. No judge was interfered with, no chain of command was breached, no order was given, even though a president can do that. And even if he really wanted to, President Trump could pardon Roger Stone, but opted not to do that. And Roger Stone is still going to prison, but for a sentence more in line with his actual crime.
If we could shift now to foreign policy, the Taliban talks collapsed spectacularly in the latter part of last year. Is there any sign that that could be back on track?
I don't know, and this is one area where I disagree strongly with the Trump administration. In a situation like Afghanistan, if you say you're going to leave and you start pulling out, you've basically lost all leverage in negotiation with the other side, because they know you're going to leave anyway. So they just want to do two things: inflict maximum casualties, humiliate the United States, and then to intimidate America's allies in Afghanistan to facilitate their takeover of the country. Because once we've announced our withdrawal, there's nothing. We have no more credibility with our enemies, with the Taliban, with whom we wish to negotiate, but more importantly, we have no credibility with those who wish to stand up to the Taliban. So there's no reason for the Taliban to do anything but thumb their nose at us now and try to inflict some casualties.
Yeah, look, I guess Donald Trump hasn't been focusing on foreign policy all that much in recent weeks. He's had other things going on in Washington. He's also had one eye to the Democratic primaries, which was the disaster in Iowa. But the tensions with Iran also remain, don't they?
Well, of course, Iran has dominated the headlines in terms of American foreign policy. The problem in Afghanistan just goes back to, it's the same thing that Obama did when he announced that he was going to withdraw from Iraq preemptively when he was elected. You create a vacuum when you do this, and I think Trump is repeating Obama's mistake. But now President Trump is fully engaged, and the American public is fully engaged with the cascading train wreck, which is the Democrat primary.
It certainly is a cascading train wreck, but wouldn't it just be a gift to Donald Trump if Bernie Sanders eventually got up?
Well, there's so many gifts here for President Trump, it's really hard to imagine. If Bernie Sanders is the nominee, it not only is very unlikely that he would beat President Trump, it is at least a 50% probability that Bernie Sanders will take down the Democrat majority in the House, in Congress as well. And the Democrats know this. That's why you see John Kerry, all kinds of Democrat, luminaries, from James Carville, who ran Clinton's campaigns, to John Kerry, who ran against Bush in 2004, all know this. And they're terrified that Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee. But if there wasn't something worse, here it is. Bernie Sanders, I think, not only has a better than 50% chance of being the nominee. The nomination process is going to be so bloody, so long, and they're going to end up in a contested convention, which hasn't happened in American politics in like 6 decades. So not only they're going to have a bad nominee, it's going to be just a crap show, to find a word, getting there. So I think it's an unfolding mess that shows no signs of abating.
Well, that's a new term for breakfast television. We appreciate it here on First Edition. John Jordan, good to see you. We'll see you next week.